post-coaching hires, post-free agency top 10. Baltimore 11, Jacksonville 12. Jacksonville lost a couple of key pieces. Don't love that. ETN, the running back, who'd been there with Trevor Lawrence forever. So I got Baltimore 11, I got Jacksonville 12, and that's where we stand today. Okay.
The Jacksonville Jaguars are sitting at number 12 according to Colin Cowherd. Jags fans, you know I've got your back. Making Jaguars clips, Jags clips simply do not exist. Is this the best you've got? This is what we're getting from the herd right now. A bit of an afterthought. So, yeah. I saw this because I was looking at the top 10. I've been breaking down all the teams, especially since Colin has been on vacation. I figured this would be a fun way to keep things rolling until he gets back, which I assume will be Monday. Fingers crossed. So I knew he had the Jags at 12. And I saw that and I just thought, it's interesting, because when he does his herd hierarchies, he'll occasionally start naming teams that are 11, 12, 13. And what I find interesting about a team like the Jaguars is that they got really hot last season. There was so much momentum there, especially after they beat the Denver Broncos. People were genuinely starting to believe in them. There was a real sense of, hey, this team can win. This team is legit. You don't want to face them. And now they've had a pretty normal offseason. Nothing crazy. And as we learned, it's not Etienne, it's a chain, or something. I forget exactly how he phrased it. I still want to call him Etienne, I'll be honest. But you lose him. Again, don't get me wrong, it's a thing. But it's not like this is a team that just got cut in half. And this is why this is one of the takes I repeat so regularly, especially during the offseason, because I firmly believe it and I believe it stands the test of time. I don't see how it could ever really be broken. This is why you need your team to be well run. It's not about just the players. You have to be able to constantly continue. It's one of those things where you're walking down a path or you're using a ladder, and you need to take the thing behind you and put it in front of you and take a step. Then you take it behind you, take a step. Otherwise, you do just fall. So as long as your team is well run, you are in a position to be competitive, because it can't just be the individual players. That's why coaching to me is arguably more important than even a quarterback. Don't get me wrong, you're going to be a better team obviously when you have a great quarterback, an elite quarterback, all that good stuff. But the coach is the one who is there to juggle and make everything make sense. Trevor Lawrence has been here for years with the Jags. Liam Cohen is the one who's in a position to really be the difference maker, just by virtue of maximizing Trevor Lawrence while losing and gaining random players. Ideally, if you're a Jags fan, for the next 30 years, you're under Liam Cohen's guidance. I find it interesting that people can get so excited about a team, and we'll just call the Jaguars an up-and-coming team in that moment. I know they've been kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation with Doug Peterson and Trevor. 1 minute it feels like, okay, we've got this going. The next it's like this is going nowhere. So it's kind of hard to call them an up-and-coming team when they've been a little bit of that, but I think there was a sense of, okay, Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence, this is working. I just find it interesting how quickly people are kind of hands-off on the Jags. There really hasn't been anything about them. I haven't seen much of anything about the Jaguars right now. This is literally the best there is. And listen, I always hunt for teams to try to make content around that no one's really discussing. I've been able to find Titans stuff pretty easily recently. The Raiders have a ton of momentum with the number 1 overall pick and obviously the Max Crosby trade and all that stuff. But the Jaguars have genuinely been non-existent. Some of these other teams I understand why they could be non-existent. I could understand a Titans team even though there's been some momentum there. But I understand why not a lot of people are talking about the Carolina Panthers, though they're an intriguing team at this moment. I understand the Browns. I understand all of that because you're just like, what are these teams doing? Who cares? People were literally saying that the Jaguars could win the Super Bowl. And they had an awesome playoff game against the Bills. Yeah, they lost to the Bills. I get it. And even last season wasn't the most straightforward season. They had one of the worst games I've ever witnessed. A game that I ripped them for. I never hide that. I was so upset, so angry. Rams fans got mad at me because I didn't praise them enough. I said, no, this was 100% about the Jaguars. This is embarrassing. This is insulting. Which is why I was so excited when they turned it around. Because the Jags were a team going into last season that I said were going to be great. Liam Cohen was going to elevate Trevor Lawrence. And that wasn't happening. I was like, you're making me look bad. You're making me look dumb for ever believing this was going to be anything. Then it did. And it was genuine. It wasn't cooked books or anything. So I just find it interesting that they're genuinely non-existent right now. And here's the thing, Trevor Lawrence. And I'm always going to attach Trevor and Liam together because I almost look at coach-quarterback duos, especially when I believe you actually have a true, legit, high-level head coach, which I believe Liam Cohen is. There's such potential for year 2 growth with Liam Cohen and Trevor. Such potential. Last season, we definitely saw some really high-level play and some really downright awful play. We just did. Trevor led the NFL in dropped passes. As a quarterback, it was him and Bo Nix at the top. That shouldn't be the case. Some of it was Trevor. Sometimes drops are a little tough because sometimes, as I made a clip back in September highlighting, there were dropped passes because Trevor was throwing the wrong type of ball. So some of that is on Trevor. But the vast majority wasn't. That was just an inability to execute and a disconnection from the team as a whole. But they obviously got on track there. Throughout the course of the season, even in some of their great moments, whether against the Broncos, even against the Bills though they lost, especially against the Chiefs, that final drive kind of sums it up perfectly. There was a slipperiness to their success. There was a slipperiness to Trevor Lawrence. It never felt like they really had their footing down. Usually when I say that, I mean it metaphorically. But in Trevor's case, it was actually literal slipping. He literally slipped on that game-winning drive against the Chiefs. He slipped against the Bills. So it's a perfect representation where there was a lack of smoothness. If they can feel that this offense can be a lot more connected, with continuity and continuation of elevation, I like that. With Trevor and Liam, I don't see why this team isn't exactly where they were before, if not even better. That's why it's important to me to watch a game with Trevor and just feel like everything is under control. Because I think what Trevor did pretty well individually was survive the chaos of any given moment. Plays, everything can feel chaotic. Things can feel sped up. I always say this, if you feel it as a fan, oh my god, what is happening right now? They're feeling it as a player. That game-winning drive against the Chiefs was one of the most insane things I've ever witnessed. 1 minute it was like, what are you doing? The next minute it was like, that might be one of the nicest throws I've ever seen. That is big time, to oh my gosh, what are you doing right now, to oh my gosh, how did that just work out? He did a good job of surviving that. But I do think there is a difference between that and what I always refer to as organized chaos. Being able to own those moments, but there's still more of a groundedness. For me, he was getting by on pure skill and instincts rather than I'd been here before. Yes, this all looks crazy right now, but I'm moving in slow motion. That, to me, is organized. Chaos. Yes, all this stuff is going nuts and you're like, what's happening, but you're still completely under control. And they didn't do that enough. Which is interesting because I do think the Jags were such a prepared team. Again, they highlighted that especially against the Broncos. They were just so ready, so prepared. They were baiting the Broncos, getting up to the line of scrimmage real fast. They just knew exactly what needed to be done. But yet there was still a slipperiness. It was almost like they were learning how to play in organized chaos, but they were still rehearsing it. They were still practicing it. They were still just familiarizing themselves with how things get crazy in any given moment. The Chiefs have been some of the best at that. The Ravens seemingly look like they can do it, but they can't. It's them surviving those moments rather than being comfortable in them, which is why in the playoffs they come up short. So I want to see that growth. I want to watch more Jags games, especially Trevor Lawrence individually, and feel like there's a calmness and an organization. You should have a sense that things feel slowed down. You could see in real time the Jags' progress and get better and better, but you could still see the slipperiness, this uncomfortability, it wasn't quite there. The simplest example is like I'm teaching you to throw a certain way, and you're doing it and succeeding, but it's still not quite comfortable. It doesn't feel second nature. That's why I'm hopeful that year 2 brings a feeling of, okay, this team has their feet underneath them. That's how you take it to the next level. That's how there is that evolution. That's what I'm excited to see. That's also why I put it on Trevor to put in the work and keep coming to Liam Cohen and saying, make me better. We made so much progress last season. Make me better. I want to be a better quarterback individually. I've shown this clip a million times, so I won't do it now, but Tom Brady was talking about Liam Cohen and how great of an offensive coordinator he is, and how a great OC's job is to get a lot of reps but widen the margin of error, to not make your quarterback have to thread the needle. That's what Liam Cohen was doing for Trevor again and again, so you're seeing more success. Now I want to see Trevor Lawrence pay the favor back and say, I'm going to contribute even more now. Because a tremendous amount of success last season was Liam Cohen driven. Let's say 70% Liam Cohen elevation, 30% Trevor. We can have this coming season where Trevor brings the 70%. Now you're talking about having an elite coach-quarterback duo rather than a coach just squeezing as much juice as he can out of his quarterback. There's a difference. That's what I'm looking for with the Jacksonville Jaguars. If that happens, then losing a guy here and there, having some roster turnover, who doesn't have that? Name the team that doesn't have that year to year. So that's where I'm interested to see, can the Jags continue this momentum? Can Trevor Lawrence continue to grow and evolve? The way that gets done is by Trevor putting in the work and having the relentless thirst to say, make me better. What do I need to do to become the best version of myself? You do that, you have legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. You don't, then you become reminiscent of the Kirk Cousins Minnesota Vikings. Maybe the best version of Daniel Jones with the Giants back when that was a thing for all of 2.3 seconds. It's like, okay, there's some juice here, some great playmaking, some great play calling, but it's not quite there. You see the success, but you can't put your finger on it. It's what we've been seeing out of the Packers with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. So how do you bring this home? I maintain that it stops and starts with Trevor Lawrence saying, I want to be the best. You do that, you've got something special. But yeah, sitting at 12, with the Ravens at 11, the Chiefs not even there at all, I don't know. This was before the Waddle trade for the Broncos. Up to that point, the Broncos really hadn't done much of anything. The Waddle was a huge move, no doubt. So Jags fans have got to be like, wait a second. We smoked the Broncos, but they beat the Bills. And the Jags lost to the Bills. That's where football can get a bit messy. But if you're the Jags right now, if I have the feeling that Trevor is continuing to get better, I'm not necessarily looking at these teams and thinking we're lesser than them. If I'm looking at these top 10 teams as the absolute truth, my mentality goes to, as long as my defense isn't trash, and as long as my offensive line isn't trash, we're going to be competitive with every single one of those teams. As long as my defense isn't giving up 40 points a game, and my offensive line isn't the Chargers' offensive line, why am I suddenly unable to compete? Of course I can. So it's going to be interesting. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Jacksonville Jaguars, not even making the hierarchy, sitting at 12 right now? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.